you. Thanks to all of you courageous who are still here. So I try to make my best to keep you until the end. So the first feedback I want to insist on is the difficulty we had to map attributes and categories between tools. I knew there was a problem. I didn't realize how ridiculous it is. Not only seems don't have the same concept. That's what I saw. They talk about offense, they talk about incident, notable events, but it's like they made on purpose not to have the same attribute. Even when the attribute is the same, for example, between Sentinel and Curadar, they on purpose they put one with a capital, the other one without a capital, and the same for the props. And this is terrible. This is very good for the hackers because we are so disparate. There is so much disparities that it's very difficult to consolidate. And I'd like to remind you to the ancient one that there is a monitoring protocol called SNMP for availability. And at that time it was invented, people were trying to work together, not only to make money with different solutions. And if you work with SNMP, all target IP is what is written here. It's not very nice, but at least it's the same. So what is the consequence? It's a burden, and of course it weakens our protection capacities because everything is different. There is no interoperability, loss of information when you share, no pooling of expertise. If you have a team expert in Splunk, you put them in front of Curadar, they have to relearn everything. And I know from my former experience that if you put two teams in front of two Curadar on the same architecture, the tuning, the configuration probably will be completely different. So the first thing, which is a dream, is that without changing everything, we could at least on the major attributes, source IP, target IP, time, things like that, it's about maybe 10, all the vendors should agree and share the same. It's like a core of attributes, and then you have your difference with other attributes that the competitor don't have that are totally useless, but still you have it, they don't have it, etc. But at least if we could start like that, it would be easy and very powerful. The other thing, which is scary, is that if you go to physical security monitoring, which is just appearing, they are repeating the exact same errors. So if nothing is done, in 10 years, we'll have the same slide for physical security with different attributes and still a lot of difficulties to work together. Another feedback is the fact that IDMEFv2 was based a bit on the concept of IDMEFv1, so really the probes toward the manager. Of course, we could talk from manager to managers, but it wasn't really the goal. And SAFE4SOC highlighted, and maybe the goal was not good 20 years ago, but today it's really a need to be able to communicate between managers. And as I said at the beginning, the SAFE4SOC brought this concept of information sharing gateway, which is really the missing link for this communication. So you can filter what you want to share with the central SOC. So there is really two big use of IDMEFv2. You can monitor from one side, you can monitor a lot of platforms, and you can also report. That's also something which appeared because, well, we had to study all the regulation, and you see that everywhere there is a lot of regulation with reporting. And it's kind of joke. If I found the name of the project. If I had to rename it, I would call it SAFE4SOC. Standard alert format exchange and reporting, because reporting is really more than exchange, what people need to do today, what companies, organizations, nations, they need to report. So first, the monitoring, and second, a faster and standardized report. Instead of having different format or doing it manually, you can really automatize a lot of things. Even if at the end you have someone checking, but in some condition, it's more important to be fast, to have the information shared very quickly if it's of high priority or certain category. And right now, there is an initiative at ENISA called Digital Omnibus. I'm not an expert, but the idea, they find out, of course, too late, that they have many regulations, like Europe, the regulation, and they want people to declare, to report incident, but everyone has a different point to report, a different format. So as they're working on this SEP, single entry point, I think it would be a good occasion to have a single format also, and not do a single entry point and in 10 years say, oh, maybe we should have the same format. So we are hardly trying to contact ENISA on this subject, but it's quite difficult. Sorry, is that? So now a quick list of all the use cases we identified during the project. So first, the MSSP use case is quite simple, and we have a lot of MSSP in the consortium. So the idea is you have a lot of different SIEMs to monitor as an MSSP. And instead of having one guy in front of each SIEM, you have a central IDMEFv2 console with all the incident. And when there is a problem, you connect to the local SIEM, but you can have only one platform with everything arriving. All the reporting for critical, essential operators, cyber and physical infrastructure protection. This use case, we knew it because that's the base of the format. Cross-border SOC, thanks to thanks to the format first, but then to information sharing agreement and information sharing gateway. And we also have the reporting. I'm talking again about reporting because, as we see, it's a big need. We created a small extension to IDMEFv2 dedicated for reporting, and we added some attributes like entity sector, for example, which is asked in CER, I think. And centralized monitoring of multiple entities. I think one of the major use cases is the Army use case. Well, I'll show it after. So this first one is critical and essential service operator. The idea is to have connectors on all your critical operators or vital, essential service or vital operators, and have automatic creation of incident, and having a way, not only it's automatic, but everyone has the same format, and you can store them, and you can analyze the way we did on SAFE4SOC, but on a larger scale to create interesting CTI. But for that, you have to have the same format, and it's better to choose a standard. I looked for France. We have something like 250 vital operators and 60 essential services. I think in Germany, for example, it's 2,000 instead of 600. So if you don't make something automatic, if you don't put a standard format, it's going to be a big mess, and the data won't be usable. And of course, if you can centralize in your own country, you can share with Europe. And again, there is another information sharing gateway platform because maybe you want to filter more with Europe, but it creates really a big amount of data to make a new CTI. The second use case I want to insist on, because I've been working a lot for armed force in France, but I suppose it's the same. Armed force, it's a big mess because every program, they have their own SOC deployed, depending on the partner. It's a different brand, and it's very difficult to have a central monitoring. So having with all the concept we showed with the SIEM gateway, you can connect to all those proprietary SIEM, have a consolidation for each army, and then having something higher. And what is more interesting today, that we talk a lot about European defense. Obviously, if you want to have a European defense, you have to have a central monitoring. I worked with generals in my other career. And for a general, what he needs is to know in real time what is available and what is not available. And if something is not available, it's no more a question of money. It's a question of life and death. If there is no plane, they can't save the people. People are dying. So this is really a very, very important concept. And here again, we kind of bring a little solution for our European defense without having to merge everything. At least you can communicate through the standard with the information sharing gateway concept. Another important part that my partner talked a little about is the cascading effect between physical and security, but also with climate change. Around 10 years ago, the subject in research were physical and cybersecurity combined. Now the New Horizon project, some of them talk about climate change, which is obvious. It's obvious we are all in a heat wave. It's obvious that the climate is going to have a huge impact, especially, I'm not going to redo the IDMEFv2 webinar, especially now that everything is coming out of the data center. The cars, the building, the smart city, it's not in a cool environment, it's outside, and obviously outside it's going to be hot, cold, it's going to be snow, etc., etc. Where you have a good example, when there is a heat wave, there could be a power outage, the servers are down, and there is no more camera, and you can enter. It's obvious that very soon, people who are the bad guys are going to use the climate change for their attack. I was thinking about that 2 weeks earlier when it was so hot in France. And I heard about the hospital, everything was weakened. I say, if I'm a hacker, it's the good time to attack because I'm in another country, very fresh, and I'm attacking people who are already weak. So it's very important we anticipate that. And to do that, you have to have a single format for all incidents, physical, hazard, etc. And again, we are the only alternative. The next major step, it's quite important. We are, I talked about SNMP. It's not, I'm more LDAP, but I like the SNMP also. We found that the idea of the private and the public MIB is very interesting. The idea is to publish a core standard as simple as possible, as complete, but as simple as possible, and having people able to create extension, but not just one attribute, a set of attributes. For example, the reporting that we created for SAFE4SOC is going to be an extension. So you will have report time, entity sector, maybe the contact, maybe the impact, things like that. Those information are interesting only for reporting. So we're not going to put that in the format. It's if you want to do reporting, you use this extension. It could be for confidentiality. For example, I'm talking about the army use case. In the army, you have the need to know the security clearance level. Again, we don't want to put that in the core because it's not usable for everyone, but we put it outside. But and we can also have technical extension for example, Suricata, they have a lot of information. They don't have all the room in IDMEFv2, so they create a Suricata extension. It's not always useful. The problem with people with probes, They can't make a choice. If they have 1,000 attributes, they want to send everything as only 5 is important. But if they want, they use the extension. And the idea is that even if we succeed in having a standardization at the end of the year, it doesn't stop the format. People will be able to make extension, and maybe a next version, IDMEFv3, they say, okay, this extension is so useful, we put them back in the format. But it's like a plugin or something like that. As we said, IDMEFv2 is already used in 10 European research projects. So the thing is that when you have a problem and you know IDMEFv2 is here, you use it. Our problem today is that not everybody knows, and it's very difficult to enter the place to tell people. I think that's a little my own comment, that people prefer not IETF. I think it's not serious, so it's more the European standard body, but we are at IETF because historically we are here. And so next step, and the last step of the project, to enter officially an experimental track standardization. We are aiming only experimental because we are still experimental, but there is a lot to be reused. We are quite confident because we have a lot of support projects. The 10 European projects using a standard which doesn't exist yet. It's just unique. So I hope we will have this standardization. My conclusion, when I was preparing all those webinars, I realized that when we started with my former team, the IDMEFv2 specification, drones were toys. Really, they were toys. You could buy them in a supermarket. The robots, it was science fiction. We knew it would come, but it was supposed to be in 40 years. Europe was at peace, more or less. And what we call hybrid war, hybrid attack was still a buzzword. European defense and the necessary interoperability was a no urgency concept. As now it's an urgency. We can't solve it, but we realize it's an urgency. And climate change incidents, cascading effect, were not really measured yet. So all that, it was into 26, it happened. And I'm quite happy because we were right. We're doing the good thing, mixing all that, but now we need to spread the word. So all this work is benefit to more people. That's all for me. Thank you.